everybody? How you guys doing? This is Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, saying what's going on? And welcome to Fluff Talk. I am here today with...
Carl Viking. We're back.
We're bad. I'm black. You're mad.
I am, actually. A lot has happened since the last Fluff Talk we did.
Oh, yeah. And for those of you guys out there, I am so happy to get this show going one more time. Because for those of you new deckers that are out there, I'm looking at all y'all. How you guys doing? This was the very first show that Back in the Deck ever launched on SoundCloud, and I'm happy to have my first partner back.
Yeah, it's nice to do this again. Nice to be able to make the time. I kind of fell into a rabbit hole of a tedious and grueling work schedule. So it's really nice to be, out of work in Redondo Beach by like 3 o'clock and just ready to roll,
Well, all right. Well, that's a thing. So yeah. Oh, and now people are like, what? Oh, volume? Oh yeah. Thanks, Spiderweb. Like I said, I'm super happy, super duper, super happy to have this show back together again, because this was the first one. Oh man. So wow, we got 4 people like right off the bat. This is awesome. Hey, I'm saying what's up? How you doing? How do you diddly do? To our friends. Thanks, Spiderweb. The chat. Look at that. Hey, I got the chat going. I got the chat. And yeah. So yeah, hey, how you guys doing? See, I told you we were getting stuff together, man.
What's up, Internet Land?
Yep. So yeah, hey, there you guys are, super live, super out there. Saying what's up. Hey, Nicholas Hurst, I'm glad. Honestly, this guy, Nicholas Hurst, has been one of our most loyal deckers since day one.
What's up, Nicholas?
Yeah, it's been actually. You might know him under one of his many monikers.
I know monikers.
Yeah, he's been to your house a couple of times.
What?
Yeah, he has.
Preposterous.
No, really, no. Yeah. Yeah, he's a stand-up comedian by the name of T.B. Ruday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you remember that guy?
I do remember now.
Yeah, this guy has been, like, towing the line for Back on the Deck ever since he went back to New York. So, super special props out there to you, guy. Seriously.
Well, I've been trying to court the socials and develop, I don't know if a following, but at least there's some people that appreciate my acerbic wit and or hatred for so many things.
I get that. I so get that. But I want to know, outside of the stuff that you've been talking about, like, the acerbic wit and the 50-cent word descriptions of things, that I can finally use my vocabulary with someone. What have you been up to? Which is one of the ways I can say, yeah, talk to the crowd while I do something else technical.
Well, I've been gaming a lot. I've been playing a number of games, usually the same one. I've been resurrecting some old Pathfinder campaigns. A game store opened up, like, no kidding, 3 blocks from my house, and that's been kind of a big deal. So I drift by there more evenings than not. And so on Saturdays I've been running a game there, playing in a journeyman league for War Machine, almost getting suckered back into Magic the Gathering, but I'm still avoiding the lure. They haven't put out good art enough or good fluff enough for me to really get sucked back into it again. It happens about every 5 years or so I'm a little bit overdue. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm trying really hard not to, because I'm spending too much money on War Machine models.
The hell you say?
I know, shocking, right?
You?
Yeah.
War Machine?
Well, I have
a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm getting completist with the trolls, and
okay.
I just got the new battle engine that's only available from their website, which was but I got it for like $40 less than I really ought to be paying for it.
Okay.
Which I was really stoked about, because it's a good example of fluff in a situation that you wouldn't ordinarily expect to find it, but just the fact that this model even exists lends some fluff to the sort of notion that trolls are sort of these fighty, drinky Scotsmen, clannish jerkwads. It's their second battle engine is it's called the Hearthgut Hooch Hauler. It is quite literally a kegger on wheels pulled by polar bears, and when something gets too close, they launch weaponized whiskey at it. Like, and
now,
it has
that's a damn sin. You know what? That really is.
No. See, there's more whiskey than they know.
Whiskey.
There's more than they know what to do with.
Honestly. I call heresy in a world with trolls, giants, and dwarves.
You're welcome.
There's
to call
no
it
such
heresy.
thing. There's no such thing as more whiskey than you know what to do with.
Well, they have enough to share. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well,
it's right. Just it's that person. It's like, well, I don't like whiskey. Like, well, drink up. So it's just a super fluffy piece, and it's kind of a but in a war game that recently they've kind of discontinued their published book releases.
Okay.
And they've discontinued even their what would you call it, the equivalent of codexes.
Okay.
That include fluff pieces in them.
Books,
yeah, the faction books. They've sort of discontinued those. So the only fluff you get now really is occasionally in their magazine.
Okay.
And then the little snippet on the website when you look up the model.
Okay.
That's all you get. But this model itself is just a rolling barrel of fluff.
No,
it has rules that sort of represent that.
And see, here's the thing. And I know we've been talking about doing this for a long time, but one of the reasons that we haven't touched the fluff of IK is that there's just so much. I mean,
there's a lot of it.
When they released the D20 books, it was easily 700 pages of fluff. Just, this is the world, here are the maps, here are the species, here are the religions, and then came hordes. And then they were like, yeah, here's more of the stuff. Here's more lore, here's more back history. And now with the Grimkin out and the expansions of the world since God, when did Escalation come out? That was like the last big thing.
No, Escalation, that was the second. That was goodness.
We're
talking
exactly.
like 2006. So,
yeah, exactly.
So there's a ton of stuff that's happened yet since then, but they've kind of slowed down the pace of their books. I read a couple of the books a few years ago, but their publishing schedule has been sort of curtailed since then. So all you get are these little I can't really call them fanfic because it's official, but like you get a 3 to 5 page little short story inside the pages of their publication, and really nothing else. So it's kind of hard to sort of piece it together, especially with like their new faction, like the Crucible Guard. I don't really know who these guys are.
Okay.
I've read the snippets and kind of like piece together. Oh, okay, so their such and such solo guy is the brother of this guy, or rather his brain put in a robot body, which is okay, that's neat, but I don't know, I kind of want, I hearken back to the days of old, with second edition, where it's like, what, we get about 20% rules and about 80% a bunch of crazy words you've never heard of, like I think we talked about this, Ice-T did an audiobook for Dungeons and Dragons not too long ago.
Yep.
And it's just like, that's so cool, and while they're doing that, they're not, modern game companies aren't really I don't know, they're not really just following up with that. It seems like this sort of emphasis on a system is more important, and a style, or as we go back to the old school cyberpunk, like style over substance. Like literally that was the tagline of cyberpunk, and that's sort of like catching on again, which is a little I don't know, it's a little sad. I want great stories, and I want these stories to sort of tell themselves, and I can sort of have my players participate in it, if only so that it's easier for me to do it. I don't have to spend laborious hours, coming up with new and original content. Don't get me wrong, I don't dislike doing that. But sometimes it's easier to just go, okay, there's trouble in these mountains because this campaign book told me so, and let's hear all about it. Let's give me some dramatis personae. Let's explore this and maybe kill some named characters. I don't know, or
no, I'm with you on a lot of that stuff. But yeah, so I mean, I didn't want to turn this into an episode of We Talk IK for an hour and a half.
No, for sure.
But as I was trying to say at the beginning of the episode when I didn't have the mic turned all the way up, yeah, this was again super exciting for me because Fluff Talk was the very first show that we did on Back in the Deck. You can find it on the website over at backinthedeck.com/show/Fluff Talk. And we've got...
And the archives are still on SoundCloud too, right?
The archives, yeah, they are. And they're on the website. And here we go. Yeah, we got all these things. And this is at backinthedeck.com.
Oh, yeah, we did quite a few of those.
Yeah, we did. We did a lot.
17, 18, something like that?
Yeah, 17, 18 episodes. And you can see how far we've come with the sound design and all the stuff that we were talking about. And, yeah, I mean, we've come pretty far, so... Yes, Miss Jade, only an hour and a half of IK talk. But yeah, so that's one of the things that we're doing. But one of the things that we decided to get together with you guys about today, because the Viking was there when I first started going to video, and I still have that footage, and I'm still working on editing, believe it or not.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, seriously.
That was a while back.
It was a while back, and but I think I still have the audio from that because I'm trying to get everything together. But it has been unfilled.
That was the Spelljammer one?
I think that was Spelljammer.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want to dig that out because that was a good episode.
Yeah,
that really was.
Nice rainy day too.
Yeah, it
good
really was.
Good day to stay indoor and podcast.
But yeah, so but now that we're doing the live thing and the live casting is so much easier than a lot of that. Yeah, what we've got going is I wanted to explain to the new guys out there what Fluff Talk is and what it is specifically that this show is about. That's why I hit you up with a subject a couple of days ago saying, yeah, the importance of this.
A sort of reintroduction.
Yeah, a sort of reintroduction for the people out there that are like, oh, well, yeah, we like talking about Fluff. But, whenever you get into a discussion of Fluff, specifically about Fluff, it always turns into one time I played this game where, and then everybody in the conversation wants to be heard, wants to feel important, and the definition of what we're talking about tends to get lost. You ever notice that?
Well, yeah, but to be fair, and not to toot our own horns, but we did scrupulously manage to avoid that for a good 17 episodes.
And we are going to continue to scrupulously do that. That's what sets us apart.
Absolutely. However, the setup might include dipping into a little bit of the games we've run, not necessarily our character in this one game, one time, which is, while still verbal masturbation, not exactly as sinful as talking about your one character one time.
Yeah, exactly. And so for those of you guys out there, by the way, we want to thank Spiderweb for donating to the GoFundMe today, or sending directly to the Back in the Deck PayPal for donations, because we're still trying to get better equipment. But yeah, and you can find all that stuff down in the description. And also some of the other charity stuff that we're working with. I'm a little spun today, guys. I've had a toothache for a few days. But yeah, so what is Fluff? I actually sent the Viking letter talking about the two major components of a role-playing game, or a game in general. It doesn't have to be role-playing, but you have the mechanics. How do you play? What do you roll? What are the rules to this game? Be it Monopoly, Sorry, chess.
The how does one win or how does one complete the game portion of the game.
And how does one play? How do the turn sequences go? That is crunch. We don't talk about that here. Because, much like, I like to, for the people who know video games, the crunch or the rules are essentially the engine. What engine are you using? Are you using the Fallout engine for your thing? Are you using the Double Dragon engine, the Street Fighter engine?
And the Unreal engine, as everything seems to use these days.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes down to elegance of game design and examining how the user interface goes with the players. And this goes also with board games, RPGs, and the stuff that we cover here. And then there is the setting. Like, how do you dress up all of those mechanics to be interesting to the people that play? And that, my friends, is what we call fluff.
So, the essence of fluff really is, as you said, the costume you put on your game engine.
Mm-hmm.
How you make it seem, how you bring in people. You know, like I was saying earlier, Tolkien-esque fantasy, for example, is the basic overlay. It's your typical Ren Fair garb over any game engine, and you're gonna get the people that are interested in that sort of thing. But you know, unless you have a really spectacular engine, you know, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, the Unreal Engine, so to speak, of tabletop role-playing games. Yeah, the default, very basic, default. Very you know, reliable, pretty standard. You got to have something special to drag someone out of their comfort zone and play your unique fantasy role-playing type thing. So, you know, if you want to get the weeb crowd, you need to have some JRPG elements. Whether it
be
weeb, yes, the weeb, the otaku crowd, if you will.
Oh, you mean the Americans that love Japanese pop culture?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
You know, you have to have spiky hair. You have to have big swords. You have to have probably summons.
Big eyes, small mouth, speed lines.
Conceivably. You know, there's a number of things you could have involving it. And you're trying to drag them into your thing, and you're trying to, you know, that's sort of the window dressing to highlight the, ideally, the interesting rules that make them work together, some sort of simpatico. And that's really the success of a game, is when it is able to have rules that reinforce the fluff, or fluff that reinforces the rules. You know, and there's a couple of really good and solid examples of that, which we'll get into in a little bit. On the opposite side of the coin, you have crunch and fluff that can interfere with the other.
Right.
There are games, and we'll talk about them, that the rules present this enormous barrier to actually get to the thing you want to play. You know what I mean? Like, the best example I could think of when I was going over these was the game Anima. Anima is a anime style RPG sort of. It had this phenomenal art. There's this artist on DeviantArt that I followed, and eventually all of his art started to become very consistent after a while. And I was like, oh, he's doing illustrations for an RPG. I don't care what this RPG is. I want it. He's just super great illustrator. So I'm like, okay. So I find out about this game. He finally posts the cover. I'm like, oh, I've got to get this. Whatever this guy's tied his name to, it's got to be amazing. And I started reading about it, and I was like, oh, this is super interesting. So I got this book, this heavy, just laden tome, like 400 pages. And it was a super interesting world, like very JRPG. Like, they didn't really... You know, if you liked Final Fantasy 6 or 7, you like or you know, kind of vaguely steampunk, maybe with super level technology thrown in for a twist, and magic and all the things, like, it hits every note. But there was an iron curtain of impenetrable, indecipherable, nonsensical, and game-slowing, unfun rules between you and the promised land of your totally sweet Animu fanfic nonsense.
Right.
It was so frustrating. I tried very hard to run this game.
Okay.
Very, very hard, and it just fell flat, because, you know, it's like old school roll master. You know, you're referencing 3 charts just to get the result of 1 die roll. And it's like, oh, it was so crushing, because I wanted it to be good, and the problem is just wanting something is not enough.
No, I definitely get you with that. When you hit me up with the, all right, let's talk about how some places fluff interferes with the crunch and vice versa, I'm like, I don't exactly know what he's talking about, but I trust his thing, so I'm going to say I don't know what you mean. And you gave me one example. I actually have another example that you and I actually played through. Turns out I was playing it incorrectly, but it still kind of counts. But the big example that you kind of gave me was, old school Cyberpunk.
Oh, yeah.
And that reminded me of a lot of games that have fantastic fluff, except for one small element that makes it unplayable to everyone else there.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about Cyberpunk last night, and it's like you read a Gibson novel, and you got these characters that are sly, they're devious. It's like future Sons of Anarchy. You know, they just outwit everyone at every move, and you know, when there's a firefight, it's quick, it's brutal, shit gets did, and just problem is solved. And the thing is, the fact that there exists a section for Friday Night Firefight, that the vast majority of the game is going to be consumed with getting into trouble, or as we've constantly talked about, the mission.
Yeah.
You know, never in a Gibson novel are you going to encounter, you know, the mission. The mission is 80s male fiction, you know, like those trashy novels like The Texas-Israeli War of 1999 or The Liberty Corps, you know, just nonsensical, you know, hyper-toxically masculine action novels where it's just, okay, there's a brief setup, 200 pages of shooting people in the face or some other part of their anatomy, followed by victory and possibly the object female. Like, it's just absurd.
Don't forget the booze.
No, can't forget the drinking and substance abuse.
Right.
So, you know, Cyberpunk wants to be this sleek, you know, sort of sexy future thing about a game of subtleties and outwitting one another, and that is not what you get in the old school interlock system.
No, that is not what you get.
What you get is giant cyber arms and pew pew shoot guns. 2099. You know, it's
true. It very much did turn into pew pew shoot guns. I want to hit a guy with my hammer fist.
You know,
one of the other games that I thought about, well, it was more system. Was, you know, back in early 2000s when I was working at the Game Castle, that was when D20 had become the baseline for all games. And I'm talking pre-Pathfinder. This is 3.5 period.
Oh, absolutely.
When they had all of these games, that was like, okay, this was the quintessential example. All games were D20. Now pick your flavor. The biggest contradiction had to do with the cyberpunk genre, which was D20 Modern and Dungeons and Dragons. Exact same system, except D20 Modern gave you stats for guns, thank God, guns and cars and vrooms, but they did kind of roll over into Dungeons and Dragons, which kind of broke the world.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, the game, the weapons sort of scaled up, but I think really what it comes down to is just the sort of base, sort of instinctual feeling on the part of gamers where Tolkien-esque fantasy, your characters can be heroic and bleed an anime character amount of blood in the course of a fight and, you know, still emerge triumphant, where apparently your life is largely inconsequential in the future of modern times, and you're supposed to be of a more brittle spirit and just get knocked over, you know, kind of. And I think part of it is because a lot of people, their first taste of a modern setting of a game was Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, back more modern-ish.
Well, I mean, there were three settings. There was 1890s, 1920s, and then 1990s or 1980s when it first started coming out.
Are you talking Cthulhu Tech?
No, I'm not talking Cthulhu Tech. I'm talking about Call of Cthulhu, the original RPG.
From Chaosium.
Yes, it had three time eras. It had 1890s, 1920s, and it had a modern one. But the system was the same. It's just that certain guns and weapons and technologies were not available. Yeah. And the whole thing is, your character was basically meant to die. You had a smattering of hit points, and there's nothing, no piece of equipment in the game you can get that would make you feel like a badass enough to get over the fact that you had, like, at most 18 hit points.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to take this moment to dispel that myth right there, especially since I've been studying so much COC. in preps for the Skype game that I plan on running on the 5th. Yeah, I settled on a nominee, but I was really thinking COC. And here's the thing. Chaosium and what was it? Green something games.
Green Ronin.
Yeah, Green Ronin. Excuse me.
Oh yeah, Green Ronin put out the D20 Modern Call of Cthulhu. Right? Yeah.
And they release modules for your characters to go from thing to thing. It's not meant for you to die, but most gamers who come from the school of murder, hobo, and adventure are not going to survive Call of Cthulhu, and I think that's a big difference. The Call of Cthulhu system is a good example of where we talk about how Fluff and Crunch actually work well together because it's made for investigators. That game
Absolutely.
is made for investigators, and if you try and play any sort of Aragorn-esque anime character, in my case, superheroic Wolverine type dude.
No, you finna got died at that point.
Exactly. You cannot go against the Dagron when you have a 45, and looking at the Dagron makes you carve your own eyes out with your adamantium claws. It's just, when it comes to that, you have to put yourself in the mindset of a Constantine, a Humphrey Bogart, just a Sam Neill in almost anything. Old
school Call of Cthulhu, and I'm going to reference a game that I ran one time, but the epic confrontation in that game was not against some great old one or some overshadowing dark entity. It was literally cultists in a gymnasium and a couple of the fungi from Yugoth in like an elevator shaft. Like, that was it. And the thing is, this was like the final confrontation. They loaded up their truck full of weapons. They went to the site, and they were just like, smoke them if you got them. This was the epic confrontation. Like, a couple of dudes with nines and like some flying fungus.
Right.
And that kind of, and this was old school Call of Cthulhu, the Chaosium one, where, you had no illusion that you were going to survive. But the D20 Modern, it's sort of, since it took the D20 system, there was an expectation that your character would live.
Yeah.
Because you had all of these hit points, because you had all of these resources available to you, because you had, frankly, defenses against the things that go bump in the night. Whereas in old school Call of Cthulhu, you did not. And that's...
Well, you might have found a book.
You might have found a book. You might think you special because you have a book. But ultimately what it is it's the same setting, but two very different approaches to how it is. There is a mechanic for loss in old school Call of Cthulhu.
In the D100, which ironically just released like 7th or 8th edition, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And the interesting thing about it, and I find that any game that includes a loss mechanic or a mechanic to adjudicate something that your character has no control over tends to reinforce fluff just by virtue of that mechanic even being there. Like, take old school World of Darkness, the rules for Raw Shrek, the rules for Paradox, the rules for Frenzy, for werewolves.
Let's take Paradox off that list because those got a little wacky.
They did get wacky, but at the end of the day, it was a mechanic for consequence.
Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying.
And so any system that includes a mechanic for consequence tends to, on the whole, be a bit more immersive. Even Cyberpunk did a little bit with the cyber psychosis. I just don't think they did enough.
I get you. I get you.
So take a great example. Let's talk about two very modern games. Let's talk about Pathfinder, and let's talk about 5th edition D&D.
Let's not.
Well, very quickly.
I want to avoid 5th edition D&D for one major reason.
What's that?
I don't know the system very well.
No, you don't have to know the system.
So
here's the only thing you need to know about it. I'm not going to talk about the system. What I'm going to talk about is the way they approached fluff.
Okay.
Which is, there's a mechanic in 5th edition that generates instant fluff.
Okay.
It's called backgrounds.
All right.
You pick a character background, and it gives you a skill set, and it gives you a special ability, I guess I would say, that has nothing to do with combat.
Oh.
It gives you access to a thing. So the one I'm always fond of is Folk Hero. Folk Hero gives you a couple of skills, and it basically says, oh, the people in this region know who you are, and will hide you from the authorities if they come looking for you, because they know you were the guy that did the country a solid
that
one time.
And ran down the money on all the miners.
Exactly. You're a local hero, and because of that, you have some sway with the local populace. Okay, neat, right? And it basically kind of inserts your character in this world. Meanwhile, Pathfinder took a much crunchier thing, and they have traits, which is like, okay, you grew up on the mean streets, and they give you mechanical bonuses, but it's not enough. It's not immersive.
Okay,
in the sense of the background in 5th edition gives you an actual role play advantage, and specifically role play advantage.
Yeah.
Whatchamacallit, there was one like Street Runner. And it's super cool, which is you get from point A to point B in a city in half the amount of time it would take anyone else, because you know secret back streets. And it's like nothing to do in combat. It's not a mechanical bonus. It's just a nifty thing you can do because of your background.
Okay.
Those are two examples of like Pathfinder didn't do enough of this background thing. It should immerse you in the game. It doesn't. 5th Ed, slot it. This is a mechanical rule. You have to pick one of these, and it gives you skills. It gives you a package to generate your character. It actually gives you money and equipment, but like by virtue of this actually static rule, you are inserted into the game, and you have a sense of who your character is instantly. Like that's step 3 in character creation.
Now, see, I like where you're going with that whole thing, because I know how much I love the fate system, specifically because of how much it pushes roleplay and how much it says, "Oh, you're here for crunch. I'm sorry. We're a fluff system. How are you doing? So I'd like you to write your background. Now I'd like you to write how you're perceived. Now I'd like you to pass your character sheet around the table so that everyone else can write how they perceive you." And it doesn't matter which fluff system is wrapped around, be it Dresden Files, Atomic Robo, soon the Princess Bride. That's right, the Princess Bride RPG coming out from Evil Hat Games on the Fate system in not too long. Found that out at con. I just reoccurred to me, and I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be a thing. One of the things that really cause it to be super immersive, and I think that right there, you said the big I word, is what is important when it comes to fluff. Okay, be it board game, RPG, it doesn't matter what kind of game we're playing. I've been watching a lot of playthroughs of Fallout, the entire Fallout series, 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 4. And oh my god, the fluff of that world is amazing. I can now see why the Duggernaut. Yeah, I can see why the Duggernaut has tattoos of Fallout on his arms and all that stuff, because that is a very cool story. And that's one of the reasons we started this show, all you guys out there watching, because the mechanics of a role-playing game can get really, really daunting. I mean, who enjoys reading stereo instructions? About 10% of the population. And if you're part of that 10...
You're also called a game master.
It's true. It's true. If you're part of that 10%, we love you guys. But really, when it comes to a game that we play, we'd like to know what the playing part would be.
Yeah. And a really... so an example of the mechanics... These are always the most interesting games. They're maybe not the best games, but they always do something interesting. Is when they have a rule, like I was saying, these mechanics for loss, or these mechanics for taking away your agency that you have to be careful of, or any kind of rule that really influences the sort of feel of the game. Deadlands is a fantastic example.
Yeah, I got to say that. I definitely
because of the cards, because of they even take away Game Master and Player. It's the Marshal and the Posse. There's a poker chip system for experience points. This is the older Deadlands, not the 2006 reboot.
No,
that was
we're
a Savage Worlds thing. Just the card draw mechanic, everything kind of meshed. It was a little clunky, but at the same time, it really made you feel that old-timey horror cowboy vibe going on.
Right.
And also Old World of Darkness, the most reviled of Old World Darkness settings, Wraith.
Oh, yeah.
Wraith.
No, oh, my God. With the shadow system.
Yes.
Oh, my
yes,
God.
you know it.
The friend-ending mechanic of any game. And
that
honestly,
ended friendships.
Oh, yeah.
But it
totally.
was brilliant.
It really was. It really was. Yeah, because, yeah, Wraith had amazing... Well, start off, I gotta say, we've mentioned old school or first edition World of Darkness about 4 times this episode. And we got time. We got like another hour on this. So I want to say, like, first edition Vampire and World of Darkness, when they released Vampire, then Werewolf, then Mage, then Changeling, then the Friend Ender 9000, Wraith the Oblivion.
I ran it once, to my credit.
Yeah, I think we all tried running it once.
Some of us definitely thought about running it, and some of us were like, you know what? I like my robust circle of friends.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely the game that you would have if you want to break up with someone and you didn't have the courage to just say the words. But
or if you want to stretch it out over a longer period of time, it's like, you know what? I don't want to end my friendship over a single game of diplomacy. I want to draw it out over 6 months until they sort of get the hint.
Yeah, exactly. And but old school World of Darkness had, regardless of its game mechanics, which I thought were really delicate and elegant in some places, and what the hell were you thinking in others?
Yeah, and Cloaky and Horrible in others, for sure.
Had really good lore. It had really good lore,
Absolutely.
a really good set of fiction. It released how many novels that ended up being really good. And again, the major thing about the fluff, and this is kind of the reason that we are into this, is the fluff of a game gives you a setting under which where you can see your stuff cinematically or literarily. You know, one of my favorite board games is, as you know, Game of Thrones.
Right.
And it's one of those games where, since I've read all the books and I've read the World of Ice and Fire and I've read like the backstories, I know the land. I know the map. I know the houses. I know how they work. I know what advantages are there. And it really helps to immerse me into the story. And when I teach people how to play the game, I tell them to think about watching the show, because again, the fluff is all encompassing. It's not, of course the game mechanics are important, but in order to understand the game mechanics, if they work synergistically, your game mechanics will back up the fluff. It's one of the big reasons I'm so into HeroClix now, because the game mechanics and the power sets and the way that the new powers are being written really reflect the comic book characters that they're representing.
Right,
and,
right. And as long as you, as long as you're able to reach a balance between sort of abstraction and the desired fluff, you get a really good synergy between, like, here are the rules as written, and how do these play? Does this feel cinematic? Does this feel super heroic? Does this feel gritty and realistic? And you're gonna get systems. You know, very often we find people super passionate about the ones where the feel of the rules matches the fluff and the tone of the game.
Yes.
And you get this just amazing thing, and people get just super jazzed about it. And then you get those games that just one or the other grinds it to an absolute halt.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna get, you know, so just a brief mention of Star Wars.
I was gonna bring up the Wars too.
And you know, it's just,
now are we talking the Decipher, the D20, or the West End game ones?
I'm talking about any and all of them for this reason.
Okay.
I like the Star Wars movies. All of them, even the bad ones. I think they're swell. Yeah, burn me
and
in effigy.
we just lost 7 subscribers.
Yeah. Burn me in effigy if you want. I think they're entertaining at the very least.
Okay.
I had no Star Wars movie has put me to sleep.
Okay.
So,
wish I could say that.
what are the Star Wars movies about? They're about Jedis doing cool Jedi shit in Jedi Land, in space. Nifty. Cool. Translate to that to a tabletop game, and what do you have? You have a bunch of players that all want to be fucking Jedi. And the problem is, because Jedi are just, they're objectively better. They're the superheroes of the Star Wars universe, in a sense. But the thing is, you can't really walk into that game with 6 Jedi. It just and the thing is, here's my thing about games like that is they're brilliant on paper. But the only real test of a game is putting it in the hands of those monsters known as players. Then you're like at no point, when they were playtesting it, I'm sure they're like, okay, this is the group that's playing Scoundrels, this is the group that's playing this is the group that's playing that. At no point did they go, okay, let's throw this to 11 and try to break the lever off. Let's have 5 Jedi and see what happens. Because if you thought about it for about 5 minutes, you would come to the conclusion this is probably what 80% of the groups are going to end up with.
Well,
a bunch of people that want to play Jedi, and that's the movies reinforcing the fluff. You are inspired by these things. Yes, there's going to be people that want to be Wookiees. There's going to be people that want to be Scoundrels, but really, most people. And, we saw this with the Star Wars Online game.
Yeah,
most people wanted to be Jedi.
Now, one thing I definitely did notice about the whole Star Wars play societies, regardless of what we're going at, is this is a classic example of how the crunch and the fluff do not match. Because we are correct. The Jedi are so hopelessly more powerful than anyone else besides the Sith. When you have a whole bunch of players that say, yeah, I want to play Star Wars, I'm going to be this Jedi, I'm going to be that Jedi, and it's kind of like, as the GM, I hate to say it, but did you notice that in the Tridge there were 2 Jedi? That was it? Like, one in training, and then the Jedi Master, then one died, and then you had the Jedi? There's a reason for that.
Show me a movie.
Can we get a smuggler or two?
Show me a movie about an Ocean's 11 of Jedi, and we can play that game. And that's the fault of the company that made
Harry Potter.
That made that made the crunch, in the sense that they didn't really do enough work to accurately represent like the films in that sense. They just made these super characters that were so appealing that there was and there's going to be an expectation of every player that most players that come into this. There's going to be those people that are conscientious, wonderful people that are just be like, you know what, so I'm all about party roll. Someone wants to play a Jedi, I'm going to play something else because I'm going to let that person have their moment in the spotlight. But there really was an expectation that a bunch of people can come in and they can all be Jedi, and at no point did any of those games really plan for that. They're just like we're going to have is it Pendragon or Ars Magica that has the one wizard and the cavalcade surrounding
that's Ars Magica.
Okay, they're like, we're gonna have an Ars Magica style group centered around a single Jedi and then the supporting cast, and it's like, no, this is a tabletop RPG. Everyone wants to be the star, unless they very specifically don't, or very specifically are letting the Wookiee win in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna lie. I have recently seen an All Bards campaign, which is it's Sirens of the Realm. You can find
I've seen it. Yeah,
and but you're absolutely right about that whole, one star supporting cast, but everybody wants to feel cool, and that is really, really an important thing for the GM to take care of. But back to fluff, the whole idea of we brought up the Harry Potter thing, and I wanted to talk about one of the reasons that are some of the games that we're not going to cover in case people don't go to backinthedeck.com/show/Fluff Talk and listen to the archives. One of the things that we debate really hard is, are we going to talk about fluff of RPGs that exist on a pre-existing property, such as Call of Cthulhu, Star Wars, Dresden Files, Buffy, Star Trek? Are we going to do those? And honestly, the answer is no, unless the circumstances are really, really special.
And the reason for that is you already know what these things are about, and if you don't, it literally takes a 30-second Google search to find out.
Exactly.
No one can explain Oriental D&D Oriental Adventures to you in 30 seconds on Google.
No.
But
we did
if
in an hour and a half.
If you've never heard of Harry Potter, welcome to the present.
And
I'm sure you're a time traveler.
Or no, or you've been in prison for the past 20 years, so good job getting out. Got respect.
Yeah,
you know?
Mad respect. Time to start over. Also, these films are available on many streaming services. Have fun with that. So you don't really need us to explain. I mean, we might need to explain some elements of Call of Cthulhu because that's literature.
Well, you know, and Call of Cthulhu is really the only gray area in this whole thing, because a lot of their expansions or their modules come with fluff inspired by the mythos, but written by independent writers.
Well, yeah, I mean, Call of Cthulhu was the world's it was like the first example of fanfic.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
That the Greater Cthulhu Mythos essentially is a bunch of writers that thought what this one guy did was really cool. They're like, oh my god, I need to be a part of that.
Right.
You know, so like Chauner Fawn is I think that was like Derelith, August Derelith or something like that, or the little weird one with the little shrivelly arms, that was an August Derelith. So like there's typically the ones with batrachian or octopoid features are largely Lovecraft, but then you get sort of the greater expanded ones, and so there's a number of different authors that participate in this sort of thing. So that takes some literary footwork.
Yeah.
So that might require a bit of explanation. But really, like, no one needs to explain Star Wars.
Right. But you know what? Y'all needed us for Numenera.
Absolutely.
You know.
Numenera is one of those things where, don't get me wrong, I like Numenera, but it's one of those things where the same company responsible for the fluff of Numenera is responsible for the crunch of Numenera, and I felt that they did kind of a poor job because it just, one doesn't seem representative of the other to an extent, and I'm almost having a hard time figuring out which it is. Is it sort of a chicken or the egg thing? Like, which one is doing the other a disservice?
It's really simple to discern. If you run a game of Numenera, and I mean with your core crowd, the one that I'm not even part of, you'll be able to tell where the love was based on what is easier and more immersive. I mean, think back to Batman versus Superman.
Okay.
We all know that Zack Snyder does not respect heroes, but he does respect badassery.
Yes.
So, what part of the movie did he care about, other than his mommy issues? And let's face it, Martha was an afterthought. But he really liked the Arkham Asylum games, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Because when we saw that scene of him beating up the dudes to save Martha, and it looked just like that video game, he liked Batman being the big badass beating up all these guys. You could tell because that was the most immersive and best shot scene in the entire movie. So when you're playing the game, what part of the game is easiest? Is it the richness of the fluff that goes along with that? Is it the ease of play to express that? Because whichever part comes most naturally and is the most immersive and is the most enjoyable is where the artist's heart really was. And you can always tell that.
The issue for me is that there's a disconnect between the game rules and the fluff. And the thing is, I don't really... I'm going to assume that Mont Cook came up with the setting first.
I can see that.
Before applying a system to it.
But Monty has always been big on setting up their settings.
For sure.
Monty Cook is that guy.
And it's a really interesting system, but the mechanics of it just seem sort of stapled on. They don't really have the sense of alienness and wonder. It's just, it almost plays like a 50-50 mechanic, where it's just like, it's just like, you roll a d20 and every difficulty pretty much is 10, and even as you get higher, the difficulty is still 10, as long as you're on par with what is expected of you at a certain point. And that's a little I don't know, it's a little jarring, because there was just this enormous sense of scope. And like, they did a lot of very clever things, as we talked about in our Fluff Talk about Numenera, where you basically were not given a leg to stand on.
Right.
In terms of familiarity with trope. They basically, they summarily executed all tropes. It's like, you have nothing to fall back on here.
Yeah.
Like, there's no safety net. Everything is weird and alien. You might be weird and alien, even though you have a human face, human body, and human parts. You are Frank Chen, normal, ordinary human of normal head amount, and but you're in that you're so not.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that.
You're in the village of Gleepaglorps, and just everything's wrong.
Yeah, you're on Gazorp. It's called Gazorpazorp Field. Okay,
Yeah.
it's just like Garfield, but it's Gazorpazorp Field.
Yeah,
right?
but the system just made too much sense.
Yeah,
It was too simple.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. Now, you and I are actually on the exact same page with one area of crunch that hurt the fluff,
What's that?
and that would be the Iron Kingdoms RPG.
So,
Well, let me
Yeah.
get a word in edgewise here.
no.
You're going.
Go on.
Because I remember when you first got that game, and I'm like, oh, dude, the IK RPG that was their own system, not the D20 system. I'm like, this is. I wanted to say great. I wanted to say it.
I wanted to
so
say great
badly.
very badly as well.
And I'm going, this is a fantastic means of making solos for War Machine. This does not feel like the role-playing game. And as we're reading, like, it's funny because, all right, no BS, guys. When they released the IK RPG for the D20 system in 2006 was it?
It was like 2003.
Yeah,
It was under.
Oh yeah, I was still working at.
It was under 3.0. So
yeah,
it was super old.
So, this was the player's guide. This was the world guide. This was the dungeon master's guide. There were the 2 browns and the red book.
Well, there's a red, a gray, and 2 monster books.
Yeah,
And they were all
and that was beyond the Monsternomicon.
And they were. Well, there's 2 Monsternomicons.
Yeah.
They were all substantial, loaded with fluff. Like the, I'm very fond of mentioning that the Red Book had 350 some odd pages, 1 rule.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
That was the most amazing thing I ever seen. Like, I've never seen something like this since 2nd edition D&D. Where
Right.
it was literally like, here, we're just gonna tell you about the provinces of the Sword Coast. That's it.
Yeah.
No rules, no stat blocks, no nothing. Just here's some stuff that's interesting for you to know.
Yeah, that's exactly the whole thing. And then when they released the IK RPG from Privateer Press under their own banner and their own system, it was that big.
No, it's a sizable book.
To
be fair, however,
it felt like compared to the other 2 books.
half of it there's 3 books to date. Half of them, the first half, is actually fluff, which is good. But the thing is, if you've been following the Iron Kingdoms of War Machine, and to be fair, if you're going to buy this game and play this game, you are going to have played a game of War Machine before.
Correct.
Like, the game master might rope non-War Machine players into this game. But the person that's going to buy this book, they have at the very least a passing familiarity with War Machine or Hordes.
Yeah,
that is I think fairly unquestionable.
I'm right there with you.
So, but yes, it is a fantastic system for making your own solo in War Machine Hordes, and that's very frustrating. And the thing that killed me most of all, because I like the fact that they didn't really give a crap about balance.
Yeah,
I thought it was really okay, cool. You know, dude. You know,
some dudes are better than
hobo
other
with
dudes.
a knife is absolutely worse than storm-powered knight with electroglaive.
Yep.
Cool. I'm down with it. I don't have to like it, but I'm okay with it. However, when you get to magic, and it's like the way you've described magic in your books, and I've read a few of those books and their short stories and their fiction and stuff, it's such a deep and kind of interesting, it's somewhere between traditional deep, like Tolkien-esque magic and like the Force.
Right.
Like there is a, and they go through the process of some guy basically discovered this fundamental law that sort of overrides everything, and all these mystics from old sort of tapped into it in some sense, and then they've codified it, and that's why when modern spellcasters cast a spell, these runes that are basically like arcane math to make stuff happen, that's so interesting. And all the spells, the spells read like the spells in 4th edition D&D. It's really like it affects a number of squares or a number of inches. It does these very static things, and there's none of the cool, fluffy spells of D&D that we grew up with. Like this has no battlefield effect, nothing. It just lets you talk to a dead thing, and the spirit that lingers in it answers your questions. Like
right, you know,
there's none of that. It's all like this places a dude this, or this does damage, and it's all very
miniatures game.
Antiseptic.
Yes, it's very miniatures game. It's not very RPG.
No, not at all.
It's very This is how to play with your minis, which is fine if I knew that's what I was buying into.
Right.
And that is where it came down. Had it been an expansion for War Machine, it would have been almost perfect.
No one would have questioned it.
But as an RPG, the magic itself was very, very sterile or antiseptic, off-balancing, which is fine because that's what magic is supposed to be, but amazingly underwhelming.
Yes.
It was just underwhelming.
And you know, it was all a bunch of minor effects, and there's like 3 spells that quite literally blow the roof off the world, and it's like, these don't need to be here. And I mean, for God's sake, like just every mechanic was all about limits and not about ideas.
Right.
You know, and so it was just, that world was put in a cage created out of those rules, and it was really unfortunate because it's such an interesting world that you have to go back to trying to find $100 out of print books now in order to run. I still run that game in D20. We've updated to Pathfinder, but I'm still running the old books that are starting to fall apart at the hinges now. And it's unfortunate. I wanted so hard, fanboyed so hard. I wanted so badly to like that game, and it was not good.
And see, that leads us into a very important thing about Fluff in general. You said that you've been running it in D20, and you've upgraded to Pathfinder, which is a really big thing. And one of the reasons that we talk so hard about Fluff all the time is that if you have a system that you know like the back of your hand, and this is for the really experienced GMs out there, if you have a system that you know this system, you know this thing, and you are just determined to take these ideas and transfer them over, it is possible. You're not going to get a 100% transfer over, but you can take the themes and the ideas of the Fluff that you like and integrate them into the system that you know. I myself have really been wanting to incorporate a lot of aspects of Numenera into, say, a Steve Jackson game or, Victoriana. That would be.
I think Numenera would be great in GURPS. I dig Numenera would be great in GURPS.
Okay, I can see that.
There's enough open-endedness that you can be weird, whereas you just feel a little, I don't know, you feel a little constrained. At least I feel a little constrained in Numenera in terms of their system. It's so like static and not really Numenera is this expansive, mysterious, like overwhelming world, and the rules are literally the opposite. They are polarized, they are static, they are uninteresting.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that kind of thing would be good for, say, the Fate system.
For sure.
Okay, the Fate system would
very
be good
free
with that.
Form.
Where again, the Fate system, if you are as into Fluff as I am, amazing. Like, I've been wanting to do a Fate system transfer of, say, Terry Pratchett's Discworld, which has a GURPS thing, but I don't really like it. But yeah, so transferring that stuff, transferring Fluff from its system to other systems.
Yeah, well, I say it would be great in GURPS. I don't actually like GURPS, but I think it would be served much better in GURPS. But then you have things like, like Exalted.
Okay, yeah.
Exalted, everyone's a goddamn superhero fighting super monsters all the time, and you know what? The rules absolutely make you feel that.
It's something that they took from AEG. Yeah, they really did.
You create, it's like everyone here is a combat monster that has powers and is immortal and is on fire, and it's cool. And then you build a character like, I am Flaming Skull guy that shoots 10 million arrows and flies, and that's great. Like, there's a simpatico there. Like, they get along just fine, and that's great. And it's just so frustrating when if you have laissez-faire rules like second edition. No one really complains about it.
Right, second edition D&D, you mean?
Yeah, second edition D&D.
Okay.
They were kind of hands-off. They're just like, here's some wild crap you can do. Here's kind of some rules to let you do it. It was like 80% fluff, 20% rules. And no one had a problem with it. But now you're getting more towards this sort of granularity where it's like, we want 80% rules and just enough fluff to sort of grease the wheels, kind of. You know what I mean? Like,
all too well.
And that's unfortunate. And it hit its worst at 4th edition D&D, where it was quite literally a board game. It was a board game with with some just like washed out remnants of fluff from 2 editions ago, you know, and I'm glad to see that in 5th edition they're kind of gaining their soul back, or at the very least they're peeling back on the rules to the point where the floodgates are open and story can now take an active part in it.
Well, you know, one thing about 4th edition that I kind of forgive them for was their timing. Okay, their timing, they were coming out, because let's face it, you went to Pathfinder, I stayed with 3.5, but the crunch on both of those games were like, I remember when
they're practically the same game.
Yeah, well, sorta. I remember when you went to Pathfinder, and you pulled out your "These are the house rules that make sense" folder for 3.5. Hang on, yeah, and your "This is the folder that makes sense for Pathfinder," and I'm running the same game, and there was a lot of cleanup on that. And 4th edition, they went too far on the other side of the bell curve, and it pulled off exactly what it seems they meant to do, which was, how do we get the Dragonborn players to play D&D? Because I'm not gonna lie, video games have cut a huge swath through a lot of the escapist community, because I was speaking with someone, I forget at what company, but action cartoons for teenagers like Teen Titans, Batman the Animated Series, Young Justice, the stuff that I love watching.
Right.
Their market demographic is getting that niche filled, that itch scratched, as you will, by video games. So Wizards of the Coast going, all right, well, it's about time that we upgrade D&D. 3.5 is kind of running its course, and Pathfinder is doing a lot, but we're kind of running out of stuff to write. How do we upgrade it? And they upgraded it to 4.0, which was beat for beat. This is how to play Dragon Age without your computer. And if that's what they were aiming for, they did it great. But the timing itself was there. They lost a lot of us going, oh my god, I'm going to Pathfinder because I don't want to play Dragon Age on a table. I want to play something more immersive. I'm not into all these mechanics. And I honestly think that 5th edition is a really, really, really good step, and a big step in the proper direction on that. I'm actually really impressed with the system. Or more to the point, I'm impressed with the gameplay so far. I like it. I kind of like it a lot from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'm digging on it. And I'm that's why I'm also very excited to see what they do with Pathfinder 2nd edition, which is coming out in a couple of weeks. The playtest rules, because they're changing it. It looks like they're learning a lot of lessons from 5th edition D&D.
Yes,
which is very interesting. They're again, it's still a world that just smacks of genericisms and kind of prosaic tropes and so forth, which is fine.
Now remember, they're tropes to us because we're in our 40s. They're not tropes to 15-year-olds yet.
I get that, but at the same time, it's still Tolkien-esque white Tory fiction. You know, same. It's the same stuff. You know, plus the occasional weird race to accommodate.
Black people. No,
to accommodate,
kidding.
To accommodate newer people. And what you were saying earlier about it's hard. Escapism is hard now. It's because we have so much media to project our escapism onto.
Truth.
That it becomes very difficult. Like when I was growing up, like fantasy was just like, okay, there's
novels.
Yeah, there's novels.
2 or 3 movies.
And that's it. You can watch Dragon Slayer or Sword and the Sorcerer, and that's basically it. So you kind of had to conjure up your own heroic fantasy. Whereas now it's just like, oh my gosh, pick a horse. You've got card games, you've got anime, you've got movies, you've got TV shows, you've got board games, you've got video games. Any number of those things, any one of those things pick, there's dozens of options for you to explore your escapism. So it becomes then very, very much easier to place the escapism onto an established work of fiction.
Right.
One that has visuals tied to it in a sense. So that someone doesn't have to come up with their own personal fanfic character. They literally just like, okay, I want to play Luke Skywalker. But I'm going to be like Leaf Star murder guy.
Right.
It's and that's an easier thing to do. So yeah, has media dulled the creative imagination of youth? For sure, absolutely. I think I don't know that there's a good return from it. There's just so much media now, that we can base our characters on. So Pomo thinking becomes more and more postmodern as we go forward. But you do occasionally find those really phenomenal fluffy games that just hit that sweet spot, And I think like in Nominee. I thought Nominee was a really, when we were running it for me and me and Dan and Christine.
You really liked that game? Because
well, I liked it. Again, I liked it on paper. It is a phenomenal game, and I think you ran it very well. And the one thing I really dug about it was that the mechanics of the game reinforce the fluff of the setting.
Very much
Even
so.
the simple fact of if you roll 666s, you fail. That's the highest roll you can get. There lies hubris. You've courted the dark side. And you roll 111s, it's a success, the lowest thing you can get. But in that you sacrifice all, you embody humility, and thus you attain a higher state. And that was super cool. That even these simple mechanics aided in the fluff of these angels trying to accomplish heaven's will on earth. That was super interesting, and it was really easy to get sucked into it because it was a very very unique setting. It was something that was not easily relatable, which like I think their list of suggested works is very small by comparison to some others. Like literally, like okay, The Prophecy and The Losers by David Eddings, and here's a couple other books and maybe a TV show.
Wings of Desire from the old German movie, and yeah, that's about it. That's what you got.
Yeah, well, God, what was that 80s TV show where it was Touched by an Angel?
Oh,
yeah,
God. No, Highway to Heaven, too.
Highway to Heaven,
yeah,
that's right.
Don't forget, because, props to Michael Landon. He was
there you go,
one of the best dudes,
So there was very little representing it. And in that sense, you kind of get sucked in because this is so unique. It's so interesting, and that's why I think a lot of steampunk settings steampunk is still sort of fairly interesting as a genre, and that's because it does not have a lot of visual representation.
Okay.
There's like a comic book or two. There's a lot of novels now that are getting on the steampunk bandwagon, but there's not there's not like a huge swath of video games. There's not like a bunch of TV shows that are all about steampunk. Like there was like a reality show about being all steampunk and stuff, but it was very short lived.
Yeah, with all those clocks and trains and shit.
It's a show about the universe and trains.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you can get fairly creative in a sense and immersive in a steampunk setting because you don't have a lot of sort of preconceived notions visually to draw upon. There's music aplenty, there's cosplay aplenty, but at the end of it, it's also a very personal experience, and you sort of have to make it your own.
Oh yeah,
which I really like, and that's actually what one of my friends said about 4th edition back when fourth edition D&D first came out, which was you have to bring everything as a game master. You have to bring everything to the table because there's nothing in these rules that support you in trying to make the game interesting. There is quite literally a footnote that says anything not described in these rules is role playing. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I talked to a number of game masters that were just very frustrated. Like on paper, the rules perfect. It is a perfect game in a vacuum until you apply ease of play and fluff and setting, because there's nothing in it that supports it.
Right.
And those are the settings that we're looking for. I wonder if the deckers out there can think of a setting that just absolutely jives with its fluff and its crunch, and they work hand in hand, because I love those mechanics that support it, like anything that does codified like downtime.
Ooh.
To support, like, okay, your character has a life that they actually live when they are not like killing small humanoids and taking their things. Like you actually have to participate. You have, you don't, being an adventurer doesn't give you a free pass from existing in the rest of the world. You have to like buy food and like sleep in a bed and occasionally catch diseases from food that you've left out for too long. And I love finding those because they're just interesting gems. They're almost like time capsules, sort of a bygone style of gaming that I hope collectively as gamers we can bring back. Because when you get someone hooked, and I had to, like in third ed, I had to engineer consequence, but I did, and it was a lot of fun to be able to do that. You could see when it sort of clicked in someone's head, like, oh, my actions have repercussions, and the game master is the facilitator of those consequences. Right. You act a fool, the spider's gonna bite you.
Well, one of the things that that I'm right there with you on is the three-dimensionness of the world, that third dimension. So often, and you say you hope that it comes back, and that's one of the reasons that we're here, man. So often, especially since I deal with so many new gamers, and I mean people that have never role-played before, they get stuck in what I like to call the FPS mindset. Okay, which is
what's the best? What gets me the most?
Yeah. Well, that's the Mortberger mindset. No, but the FPS mindset is if I do it wrong, I'm going to lose my character. How do I win this if I were playing Halo on hardcore mode? In opposed to the Mortberger guys that were like, screw the plot. It's all about killing the thing to get the stuff to upgrade my gear to kill the more stuff. And it was like, well, what about the stuff in between? Didn't matter. I just went out and I did a bunch of, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. In beginning that Welcome to Night Vale inspired game, I had to sit down with a couple of players and sort of talk them back from 5th edition to Pathfinder. Yeah, which was very interesting because they were that style. They were that FPS style of player, and they were quite literally, they were just of the mindset of like, I only need 2 stats. What stats are they? I only need these 2 stats. Everything else is inconsequential. And they were honestly going to make characters with 2 18s, 2 max stats, and 4 stats at the lowest they could legally get them, because they thought that that it worked that way. And I'm like, no, actually, every stat's really important. Like if you have one really important, if you have even one super low stat, like, you can die because of it. Yeah. Very almost like trivially. And they were just like just mind blown, just like, what? Oh yeah. I have to have all this? I'm like, don't get me wrong. They don't have to be great.
They just have to be better than suck.
Yeah, but for example, there's a poison that can damage all of them. Yeah. And if any of one of them hits 0, you're helpless and or dead. And it was just like, that the abstraction had not been taken to the point in Pathfinder where every class only needs 1 or 2 stats and that's it. And the rest of it is sword hacky and storytelling. Pathfinder's still crunchy enough where it's like, no, you kind of need to be balanced, because if you're completely unbalanced and unhinged, like, you will pay for it down the line. And then we don't want you getting invested in this game and then 3 levels down the line suddenly having buyer's remorse, and it's just like, you made this guy. Yeah. Like, yeah, well, he's just mentally and physically challenged. Yeah.
He's a bad build.
It's not talking about bad build. Why don't you make an actual person first? Like, can this guy wake up at the right time, fix himself breakfast, tie his shoes, go to the store and the post office, and return without his brain or his bones oozing out of his body? If yes, you have made an actual functional person who can live in what we call society.
Yeah. And when I deal with a lot of new players, that's the hard part to get them through. It's like explaining to them, one, there is no winning in an RPG because there's no winning in a book. Yeah. And it's like,
the reward is the next page.
Yeah. Fluff is the super big, most important thing. It's like, all right, a good amount of role playing, and this is again, since this is our relaunch episode of us finally being actually on camera, it comes down to the fluff of the story is the catalyst, or the fluff of the setting. This is the overall world that allows us to be rewarded with the fluff of our own adventures, i.e. the one time my character did this thing.
Yeah.
And that is the big reward. But so many players, so many new gamers to RPGs are still stuck in that hyper competitive, I have to do this to win.
So
and it's
I
like,
got
okay, come back.
So I got these
know?
crazy high stats and these crazy powerful items and combo these feats and was able to totally ponzor these guys. And it's like, that's not what it's about, man. It's about the character choices. You know, Mouse Guard. I hate the system Mouse Guard was derived from, but I love Mouse Guard.
Yeah.
Because the Burning Wheel did not have anything to support it. It was just an impenetrable and super abstract system.
Yes.
Whereas comparatively, Mouse Guard was based off this amazing series of comic books. And the thing that they always say is it's not who you fight.
It's what you fight for. Exactly.
Super awesome. And that actually, you know, there's rules in, like Burning Wheel they have those deeds, they have these values that you have to create for your character, but they live in a vacuum in the core rules because there's no fiction necessarily to represent it. If you can find something to slot into it, it's great.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a good fit. But Mouse Guard was a really good fit. They basically toned down on the mechanics, and they're like, no, like your beliefs are super important, and they just sort of jive together, and that's why, you know, again, I don't like the Mouse Guard system, but oh my god, it's a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think that's hypocritical of me at all, because I don't have to be in love with a system in order to think a game is phenomenal. You know, I think Rifts is a super fun game. I think the world of Rifts is just a mountain of derivative crap.
Do you see, now that's where we disagree, because I think Rifts is glorious in all of its, hey, you want to do this? Go right ahead. You want to do that? Go. It's like Nathan Explosion as president. That's what Rifts reminds me of.
See,
and it feels like they honestly said, they got a bunch of really enthusiastic writers around when they were like 15 or 16, gave them a mountain of cocaine, and published every single setting that started with, wouldn't it be cool if? And honestly speaking, there has to be one. Am I wrong?
Okay, so you're not wrong, but let me offer an opposing perspective. My feeling is that Rifts is Oprah running a Monty Hall game. You get a cyber arm, you get a magic lightsaber, you get a cyber horse, you get a giant robot, you're a gargoyle, and you're a vagabond, so you get a tent, chewing gum, and a pistol.
Yeah, but you know what? That was the context under which I learned Rifts. So going in knowing that it's going to be, and you get a robot dragon, and you get a glitter sword, and you get a magical power that lets you shoot a small robotic version of yourself at your enemies. And as the GM, I get everything times 5. It's like, that gave me somewhere to put power gamers. It's like, hey, power gamers, go over here to Rifts, and I'll be over here running something story-based in World of Darkness, and everybody's happy.
It is a delightful sandbox in which power gamers can be born, live, and hopefully die. My only problem with Rifts, comes down to the fluff.
Right.
Because the crunch of it, yeah, it's super power game. It's like Exalted, but the thing is, like, the world, the fluff didn't support these crazy rules, because anytime you ask the question why in Exalted, there is a deep-seated reason for why stuff is completely bananas, bonkers, off the rails.
Right.
Whereas if you ever ask the question why in Rifts, the answer is always one of two things. 1, Splugorth. 2, alien intelligence.
Truth.
At the bottom of everything that seems wrong in that world is an alien intelligence, and I was just like, it's like It's like reading the Mistborn series. Like, how many times can you use the same plot twist on me before I just want to pull my head off and throw it through a window?
Okay, you know what? With that, I have to say, Vibranium,
For sure.
Speed Force,
No.
Power Cosmic,
Yeah.
Infinity Gauntlet.
I agree. I'm not saying Mistborn is
and
the only...
a wizard did it.
I'm not saying Mistborn is the only example of really hack writing in terms of quote-unquote plot twists, but I am saying that it's a great example of a bad plot twist. You know, it's a good example, but Vibranium is also a phenomenal example. But when you get to the core of the whys in Marvel, sometimes it's the ultimate thing, sometimes it's the final this, sometimes it's the Infinity Gauntlet, sometimes, yes, it is Vibranium, or like in House, sometimes it's Lupus. But in Rifts, the answer is always alien intelligence
It's
/
never Lupus.
Splugorth, which to be fair, the Splugorth are also an alien intelligence, so there you go.
Yeah, and they're
so
also
the answer is
Lupus.
always alien intelligence.
You know, so I mean, honestly, but again, just because we have these tropes in Fluff, and believe me, we have them. Only one of the things I said in my little list there I dislike. And that's Power Cosmic. I just don't, you know, between Power Cosmic, Cosmic Cube, and Ultimate Nullifier, I'm like, come on, Marvel, pick a name. It all comes down to how it's used, and every author, every author of these books, of these systems, have got to keep the things in mind of how am I writing this fluff? How is the continuity? And how does this capture the essence of what I want my players to feel like or feel that they're up against? And so this is the show, ladies and gentlemen, where we explore those things. An hour and a half at a time, where we go, what the hell were they thinking? Or, okay, I want novels of this. I will never play this game. Numenera. I will never play this game, but boy, do I want to read these books, you know?
You know what? That is a really good point about Numenera. I would read the fuck out of a Numenera novel. I would read the fuck out of every Numenera novel.
All day.
I will play the fuck when I eventually can play video games again. I will play the hell out of the Numenera game. But oh my god, that game is so unplayable.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is this: which game, if you had to pick, we can even fastball this, throw science at the wall, see what sticks. If you had to name just shotgun three games that do what we are talking about, where the fluff and the crunch are in a really kind of warm, gooey harmony.
Okay.
Which couple of games is that for you?
Okay, honestly, I'm gonna. We've mentioned a couple. One, most definitely, Wraith the Friendender. Again, their shadow system is...
It hurts me to agree with you! It hurts me in here!
Number two, another game I will never play, 7th Sea.
Yeah.
Because it's all about
the old AEG system.
Yeah,
right?
the old AEG D10 system where, again, which really inspired Exalted in the, hello, we're swashbucklers, and if you think, like, we're a game that's based on the adventures of Errol Flynn and the Princess Bride, melded together and then boiled in crack juice. So the more wacky, over-the-top Errol Flynn stuff you want to do, the better chance you have of doing it. That really made it feel like, okay, I'm playing a pirate, but if I play it safe, I'm gonna die. But if I Jack Sparrow the crap out of this, I'm gonna have some great stories at the end. So I have to say the AEG 7th Sea system.
Okay.
And finally, I really gotta say, honestly, Innomine. Because one, the system itself is really simple. Okay, it really is. But anything with D6s that you don't need a handful of is going to be a simple system. But the 666-111 mechanic is really cool. But even beyond that, angels are simple and powerful. And it has so many consequences built in to the fluff and the game mechanics that of all the there are a lot of pieces of fiction that try and tackle angels. Okay, it's very, very, very difficult to write a story about angels.
For sure.
Because so few people know what the texts say. Most people have an idea of what angels do, and when it comes down to it, unless you're an occultist steeped in lots of tobacco and lots of old books, you don't quite understand how terrifying they are.
And you don't understand how alien they are.
Yes, exactly. Terrifying and alien. One of the biggest examples I could say of a character that really exemplifies what the text state an angel would really be is Drax the Destroyer from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's very literal, very powerful, very singular in purpose, you know, and unstoppable in that purpose.
And anything outside of that purpose is considered an irrelevancy.
Damn near it doesn't exist. You know, that is why I wouldn't cut his throat. I would cut his head completely off.
What class of angels was that? Those are the Malachim, right?
Yeah, those or the cherubs.
Or the cherubs.
The cherubs are
which is the one that can't fall.
That's the Malachim.
The Malachim. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the three that I would say. What about you?
Okay, so I'm stuck up on the lost mechanics because I think they are
Loss.
The mechanics that take the game mechanics that take away agency from a player, in the sense of you have to pay mind to these rules. Like, you can flaunt a lot of rules, but if you don't pay mind to these ones specifically,
I think I know where you're going with
you
this.
are effed right in the B. And I think of the World of I'm going to start with the World of Darkness ones, because of the World of Darkness ones, there are a lot of them. But I think the one that did it the best was Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, for example, in Vampire, Rorschach is a thing you can avoid. It's pretty easy to avoid it. Like, okay, yes, if you are confronted with a flame-wielding mob, you're SOL, make a Rorschach check. But there's so many of them in Werewolf that the game almost becomes a juggling act of, like, how to navigate the things that you can't do or aren't supposed to do or should do.
Okay.
It's almost like, if you really get into it, that, so, for example, Rage, Renown, and Corruption.
Okay.
There's 3 of them, whereas Vampire only had 2. They had Humanity, and they had Rorschach.
Right.
So
Mage had Wisdom and hit points.
Yeah,
that was about
that's
it.
pretty much. Mage had Paradox, and only if the Game Master enforced it well. So what you have is this sort of triumvirate of sort of what's the word I'm working, like just ways of being, a triumvirate of just like policies of things you have to navigate that sort of tell you here's what you should do. You can go outside of this, but there are consequences for doing so. And I think Werewolf was a really great example of there's enough rules to support that. Next is, as I was saying earlier, Mouse Guard. It's a very simplistic game, and a very simplistic rule set. But at its core, none of the rules established guide you outside of the principles of the game itself. They're very supportive of one the other, of one and the other. And I ran Mouse Game a handful. I ran Mouse Guard a handful of times, and I found it just really fascinating because there's just not a lot there in terms of substance on the crunch, but there's enough to sort of get people kind of very quickly boop on board. They took away all the nonsensical crap from Burning Wheel, and they just left the good, the meat and potatoes, and it was enough. And I think it's fantastic because of that. Okay. And a third game, I would honestly say Call of Cthulhu.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, Call of Cthulhu is intended for a very specific kind of life path in terms of your having played games before.
Yeah.
You are intended to come from Dungeons and Dragons to Call of Cthulhu and gain greater wisdom, greater fear of death, and greater sense of caution, and then go out and explore more challenging games from having done so. Because in Call of Cthulhu, because you go from D&D where, say, you have 100 hit points and you feel like a certified badass.
Yeah.
And then you go to Call of Cthulhu
where
and
you mean nothing.
You cap out at, like, if you are Johnny Football who does bodybuilding part-time and is a kung fu master, you have like 22 hit points.
Right?
You are just like, oh, so badass. And yet a shotgun does 46.
You know what? I gotta go in on the Call of Cthulhu thing too, because I was thinking about saying that, but much like Esmeralda Weatherwax and Angela Bassett, as far as people I think are attractive, we're just talking about number 2, because Call of Cthulhu is one of the only games that has, again, that whole loss. We never talked about the sanity mechanic, and that is
we were talking about the shape of it.
Well, yeah, the shape of it, the form of it, the not quite a piece of lunch meat, nor is it an auto part type of mechanic, but something from betwixt the twain.
We're describing the silhouette of the thing, and how many times do you see it referenced in a sense that the more you know, the less you are able to climb out of the pit of understanding. Because in Call of Cthulhu, it is not an apple of knowledge; it's a pit of understanding.
Yes, and very much so.
I listened to a podcast very recently called Tannis, and the really exciting thing about it was they describe knowledge of this myth or mythology. They describe it in the same terms that you would describe Cthulhu Mythos.
Yeah.
Specifically, the 99 Cthulhu Mythos. And for our deckers out there that don't know, 99 Cthulhu Mythos is very important because this is a number that starts at 99 and then goes down.
Yeah.
And why is that important? Because that number becomes a solid cap on your character's sanity.
Yeah, this is as sane as you can be.
You can never be more sane than what you know about these elder things. And that was so cool because... So I played a game called Dragon's Breath.
Dragonborn, you mean?
No. It was a PlayStation game. There was called Breath of Fire.
Okay, all right.
There's a series
of there's a Fantasy Flight Dragon game.
There was an old series of them on Super NES, and they were fun. But then they put out a game on PS2, Breath of Fire, and the interesting thing was you started with a life bar. You started with a power bar or a life bar that counted down constantly. It counted down every like 7 or 14 steps you took. And this was literally your game timer. The game timer didn't go up; it went down. When this number reaches 0, you die.
Yeah, you're done.
And also, but every time you use your cool dragon powers, this number goes down. It's just like that thing in Spawn.
You mean up to issue 18?
Yeah.
Yeah. When it was amazing.
Yes, where it was amazing, the countdown mechanic. And I thought that was super cool. And I think the origins of that really are in Call of Cthulhu. With the 99 Cthulhu, the more you learn, the less you can ever unlearn.
Yeah.
You know, and everything about that game perpetrates a sense of paranoia, fear, and loss. It's that everything you gain, you sacrifice for.
Yeah.
And sometimes those sacrifices are not made voluntarily.
Yeah. And one of the huge things that I've always loved about Call of Cthulhu is I'm a big fan of Doctor Who, classic Who, and sometimes to win is to lose, to lose is to win, and he who wins loses. It's like if you can get out of the situation by staying ignorant, by leaving, it's just amazing because you end up getting the most normal person, and this is a weird thing for escapism, but follow me here. At the end of the day, when you're playing Call of Cthulhu, you're fighting to stay normal.
Absolutely.
And
100% agree.
When every other RPG is to be beyond normal. COC is one of the games whose mechanics, whose fluff, and whose method of gameplay states how awesome it is just to be you. And that is one of... Now, granted, it has to be in survival horror, but
But, there's also other delightful parallels. That would be playing a paladin in a party of morally ambiguous players.
True.
It's the same kind of notion. You're trying to remain pure, or at the very least ignorant of evil, because to do otherwise would mean you're engineering your own fall.
Yeah.
And the best thing to do, the absolute objectively best thing to do, is leave the company of these murder hobos.
Yeah.
But for circumstances, because maybe you've made poor choices, or definitely because they've made poor choices, you have to stay in their company and see this through. So it's that kind of gritty, almost...
Well, sometimes you have to be that light.
Yes. Very sad. Sometimes you do have to be that light.
So, but yeah, this has been... I definitely want to thank you for coming back in and us getting this back up in order, because this was one of my favorite shows to do. Where can they find you if they want to look for you on the Webernets? I am
vaguely courting internet non-anonymity, so you can find me at D20_chef on Instagram.
Okay.
And that is it.
Okay.
I will not be contacted in other ways. You will probably find my Facebook via that, but D20_chef.
Well, what about on Deckers on the Book? I've seen you.
That's on the Facebook.
Participate. Yeah, that's on the Facebooks.
Yeah, but I'm not.
That's
sharing.
On the friend face. There.
I'm not sharing.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Instagram is where I whore myself out for the public.
Well, fair enough. And I'd like you guys. I'd like to thank you guys, and we've had a really busy chat today. I'm loving you guys out there. Let's see here. Yeah. I want to thank you guys for showing up. For those of you guys listening on the SoundCloud, hey, keep on showing up, because you guys can download this for free. I'm a big fan in that one. And I want to thank you guys for showing up again. Yet another day where we're going to be doing live casting. I guess Fridays is what we're looking at being the Fluff Talk day. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. At least as long as your work schedule stays the same.
Yeah, we got to see how it flies. The world of kitchens and cooking is very often
and the fact that you're here on a Friday night is a little weird for me, because I'm like it's.
Well, I am the chef of a lunch service, and I am a pastry chef, which means I am out at 3:30.
Okay, well, fair enough.
So I do have my Friday nights.
All right, sweet. That's what happens when you stay in the same field for more than 15 years, kids. But if you guys like the stuff that we were talking about and want to talk about some games with us, then that's a very simple thing. All you gotta do is get a hold of us at backinthedeck@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to this channel on the YouTube and hit that little button, that little notification button, so you know when we are doing everything. That is YouTube/BidP. That's little b, little I, little d, space P. Follow us on the Twitter at backinthedeck. That is at BACKINTHEDECK. Or you can find us on the Facebooks. I'm on there all the time, and leave like your pictures and talk to the other Deckers with Deckers on the Book on SoundCloud. You can also Deckers on the Book on the Facebook. You can also check us out on SoundCloud at SoundCloud/BidP. That's BID_P. And follow our Instagram at Instagram/backinthedeck. We've got a lot of stuff going on. Fortunately, this weekend, the first session of the San Clemente Boys and Girls Club D&D, or Boys and Girls Club chapter of the D&D Club, had their first session on Saturday with Mr. Danny Sanchez, and we're going to be talking with him sometime this week to find out how that went, and we're going to be talking to Long Beach Parks and Rec so that we can start those gaming clubs out in this area. And it was hit up to me today that some people might want to start to donate. So in our description, you have a link to our GoFundMe for the equipment that we're trying to get our hands on, and you can always hit up the Instagram, or not the Instagram, but the PayPal. If you want to send a direct donation, you can PayPal us at backinthedeck@gmail.com. That first little thing right there, that's also our PayPal. And one of the things that I really want to beg you guys to do is to spread the word, get more people watching. You know, we like having conversations with you guys, and we like looking at the conversations that you guys have. But with that, I have to say that I'm happy to have you guys back. I'm happy to see you guys on every single one of our shows, because we have shows on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and every other Thursday. Oh yeah, and Tuesday, and every other Thursday, because this is what I do for a living now. So with that, I'm going to say hit us up on all of those things. And if anybody tells you that you can't do what you like, have the hobbies that you have, or any of the things that you like or do because of the circumstances of your birth, be it person of color, woman, LGBT, disabled, rural, poor, or hell, if you happen to be over 40, 50, or 60 and you want to share this with your grandkids and people say that you're too old, you tell them to take those cards and put it back in the deck. This is Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, here with the Viking, saying thank you guys, and we will see you next time on Fluff Talk.
Take care.